Today I have four seminarians with me. I have Michael Figuera, Logan Hepp, Devin Rydell, and Josh Richards. And three of these seminarians are from my home parish, and one is from a neighboring parish, but they're all currently working at my parish. I have some questions for them today. And the first question that I have is, what did you do before you went in the seminary? Logan, you want to answer first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Logan. So I go to seminary down in St. Louis, Kendrick Glennon Seminary, and I'm in Theology 2. Before I entered seminary, I worked for an organization called Focus, the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, and they work on college campuses, rescuing hopeless young men like myself from the snares of the world. So I was in Kentucky for 2 years, working with Focus. So I led Bible studies, and I basically got paid to distract college students from their homework and to encounter Jesus Christ instead.
Well, if you do have a college student, it is a great thing to get your son or daughter involved in, and that'd be Focus. And they're on most campuses across the United States.
Yeah, they're awesome. Like I really do have a lot of gratitude for Focus, because I wouldn't be in the seminary if it weren't for Focus's involvement at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where I went to school. The missionaries they really do a wonderful job of loving college students and showing them how much Jesus loves them. So I'm incredibly grateful for their work.
How about the rest of you?
Hi, I'm Devin Rydell. I go to seminary at St. John Vianney College Seminary, and did I say college? I did. And I'm from St. Stephen the Martyr. Before seminary, I was just a normal university student involved with Focus at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And I lived at the St. John Paul II Newman Center, which is on campus, and it's one of the few Newman centers with dorms. And so I was just your standard run-of-the-mill college student. I don't know, developing through Focus, like a lot of their leadership, developing a prayer life, a relationship with God, and with seminary in mind, but for the most part, just trying to grow in love with the Lord while I was there, and developing a lot of really good friendships and a lot of really good habits that served me really well in the seminary.
How about you, Michael?
Hey, I'm Michael Figuera. I am College 2 at St. John Vianney Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. And prior to seminary, I was also a regular university student, also attending University of Nebraska at Omaha. And I also was at the Newman Center. I was studying engineering.
Wait a second.
I know. So I was studying engineering at UNO, looking into architectural potentially as my major, and living, a college life. At the Newman Center, a little bit involved with Focus, did some retreats and whatnot. Prior to that, I went to Scott Catholic High School and did 2 years at Millard West before that.
Yes.
We have three Wildcats on here. That's the mascot of their high school. How about you, Josh? He's not a Wildcat.
No.
My name is Josh Richards. I am from St. Columbia Parish in Papillion, and so I'm just here for the rest of the semester studying at the parish at St. Stephen the Martyr. And this is going to be very original, but I also went to University of Nebraska Omaha.
No, you didn't.
So
Dang it.
I began the year before Devin, and 2 years before Mike. So we all kind of came consecutively. And so I got to know them a little bit before I went to seminary. And I was studying social work and education. And so now it's really fun to have them on the same floor as as me in seminary.
Wow.
So that just
So you're all three at the same seminary up in Minnesota.
yeah.
Let's just say our path has been pretty successful producing seminarians. So.
Yeah, holy cow. Josh, I actually don't know if I knew that you went to UNO first.
Yeah. 2 years.
Wow.
So we'll take you down a little further down that path. Tell me a short story of how you were called into the seminary. Go back to you, Logan, and start with you.
Oh boy. How to make that short. Well, so in college, I had a really powerful encounter with Christ at a conference put on by Focus, and I gave my life to him there, and I really meant it. And so I was praying about like what that might look like. And so I don't know, I was thinking about the priesthood for a little bit after that, but I started dating a girl. And so it wasn't until I was a first-year Focus missionary, I ended up breaking up with her. And it was during that time where I was just kind of like, all right, Lord, like, where are you leading? What's going on? I was just really open. And I was just very available to him because I was in the middle of a different state, a different culture. And I was just giving myself in prayer and service, and I started to hear a little invitation to give myself in a unique way, in the unique way of the priesthood. And it took a lot of like gentle pushing from the Holy Spirit to get me to start actually praying about that. And once I did, my heart just came alive. I was just on fire with the idea.
How about you, Devin?
Yeah, I would say the thing that of course, being a cradle Catholic, as they're called, of course, had heard a million times, oh, you should be a priest. But I just remember how much I was just like, no, like, I'm not like any of the priests that I've met. I've never met a seminarian. Like, I have no idea what this means, essentially. And I just remember it was Vocation Sunday, and the priest had gotten up to the pulpit and was giving his vocation story. And I was sitting there about to enter high school, and he told the story about just how he got into seminary. And it was his brother had perished in a car accident. He was now the only child, and his mom is now facing the question of like, people in the parish or people in her community being like, you're not going to have any grandchildren. What are you going to do? Like, are you nervous about this? Like, are you sad? And she goes, and her son was in theology at this point, I think about where Logan is right now. So kind of like making, like, there's like those, like the decisions are coming up where you're like, I might be ordained soon. And he's kind of like stressing out, and his mom was just telling him, she's like, and telling the ladies in the parish that I'm going to have 1 billion Catholics each call my son father. I have plenty of grandchildren. I was just so blown away, like something deeply wounded me that I had been lacking because I had been trying to be so self-reliant, relying on the Lord. And that was kind of like, it broke whatever hard shell was trying to I was trying to protect myself from the love of the Lord. And that really kind of like started what I call the like slippery slope almost. Like everything after that, the Lord just kept giving me that little nudge, because if he had given me a big push, it wouldn't have worked real well in my position. But that started every other decision up until that point.
Michael, how about you?
Yeah, so I was also a cradle Catholic, and going through middle and high school, there were a lot of, I became a lot more involved. I had a lot of like Steubenville experiences and retreats where I was growing a lot closer to the Lord. And at youth camp, there were also a lot of experiences. just in adoration, where I was getting to know Jesus Christ truly was, and the relationship he desired for me. But along with that, I wasn't, so I guess with these experiences, the thought of priesthood kept sort of surfacing and then submerging again for long periods of time, because I would sort of push it back down. I don't know what that was, but let's just sort of brush that off to the side as long as
That's so
so yeah, that happened on a number of times kind of throughout high school. Just kept pushing it away, like, maybe I'll consider that later down the road, but I don't have time for that right now, or I don't want to think about that right now. So that kept happening for quite some time. And eventually, once I was in college, my relationship with Christ was becoming a lot stronger, and I was falling into more regular prayer. So this was sort of coming to the surface a bit more frequently. And at the same time, I was kind of experiencing a little uncertainty about what I wanted to study and do with the rest of my life, just with my major and everything else. There was one particular evening when in prayer, the Lord pretty clearly told me that I wasn't going to be fulfilled as an engineer, and that I really didn't need to keep pursuing that. And at the same time, he was whispering more persistently that he'd really like me to consider the seminary and the priesthood. That was a pretty big milestone that got me on the path to discerning more seriously if priesthood would be what God is calling me to.
Wow.
You know, God works that way. He just kind of prods you along just a little bit and just pushes you. And then eventually you either give in or you ignore him. But he'll continue to bother you.
I would say we've all had those moments of kind of like, nope, don't want to do this. And thanks be to God, he's a jealous God, and he really wants us.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Josh?
Yeah, so I didn't grow up Catholic. I grew up non-denominational, but honestly, I think we kind of just would have went anywhere as long as, I don't know, Jesus was there. Like that was kind of our attitude as a family, I think. And so it was actually it kind of starts when I was about 7. So my mom and dad divorced when I was 7. And so that obviously just kind of does a lot of things to you, even though you might not recognize it, right? But eventually my stepdad came into my family, and he was a Catholic, and he's very free about, like, you know, you can go to mass with your stepdad or your step grandparents and and me, and so we all eventually went to their parish, and I just felt like it was such a family going to that Catholic church, and yeah, that just really struck with me. And I remember reflecting on that later. I didn't really recognize it then as a kid. I don't think I couldn't put it into words. That's how I felt. And so eventually became Catholic in 2011. So this is about my 9th year anniversary this year. Of becoming Catholic and being born into the church, and it's been really good. But I still didn't think about priesthood until a little bit later. So then a senior in high school, I was like, wow, I really love Jesus, but I don't know, there was a hunger inside that wasn't being met. Mm-hmm. And that kind of led to like a lot of frustration in me. And the Lord just kind of made it clear, like, Josh, why don't you just join the youth group? Just like, you're the one who's supposed to go out and like find, like, satiate this, like, to search for me. And so I did, and I think it was one of the first times we met. We were watching the Alteration series with Father Mike Schmitz, and it was about the Mass. And the first video was called "I Will Follow." You can find it on YouTube. But I just, at the end of that video, Father Mike Schmitz and Father Josh, funny enough, said, you know, and I'm a Catholic priest, and they put on their collars, and I was like, whoa. Like, just the beauty, the Lord totally drew me to that beauty of, wow, like, this is something I want to do. And that hunger was kind of satiated in that moment. And it led to more hunger, like, let's do this. And so, yeah, it's really been through that hunger and prayer that the Lord has continued me on this way, and just answering my prayers, like every semester, like, Joshua, I want you to continue in seminary, and be drawn, like, just being drawn to the priesthood. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What did your parents think?
First, my parents were, I'm not sure if they were kind of confused but they were happy. I just don't think they were expecting it. It's like, this guy who's barely been Catholic for 4 years and wants to be a priest. But they were totally, like, they were excited about it, and they love Jesus a lot, and they're supporting me the whole way. So.
Wow, that's awesome. Praise God.
Yeah, no, that's not the experience of every seminarian. So.
Right.
Let alone converts.
Michael, how about you?
My parents had a really good reaction, which I'm super grateful for. And I wasn't really sure what to expect when I first told them. If they were going to be like, oh, what is going on? Are you living? Just because, like,
what have you been drinking?
But apparently my mom had sort of seen this coming before I had, and other people who never really told me. So apparently this is going on, and they just think to let me know ahead of time. But my parents both had really expectations. They were super excited to see me enter the seminary.
How about you, Devin?
So yeah, I would say it was a really good reaction, but similar to Mikey's mother, I think they had seen this a little bit, but not through their eyes. Like, they weren't like, Devin's going to be a priest. But so the pastor of course, our parish for the longest time was Father Jim Teagues. And Father Jim routinely, if not like repetitively, would be like, I think Devin's going to be a priest. I think Devin's going to be a priest. And then, of course, they had, like, I think we had a few vocations events in the parish, and I was always the youngest kid at them, like by a long shot. By years, I'm talking. And it was just, my dad would take me, or my mom would be like, well, if God calls him, like, and eventually, like, even at the end of the story I told earlier, my dad leaned over to me at the end of that and was like, are you thinking about it? And I'm like, yeah, sure, realizing I really wasn't, but it'll get them off my back a little bit. But I remember when I told them, I was like, we were on a college visit, and I was like, I think I'm going to apply for seminary. And they were a little shocked, but they were very supportive.
You're fortunate. How about you, Logan?
So I told my parents in an Olive Garden, and I didn't know exactly how to have this conversation with them. So I was like, well, it was the summer.
You eat Italian food while you're doing it, right?
Exactly. We need some comfort food here because I don't know how they're going to react. So I was, like I said, I was halfway through my 2 years as a missionary when I did this. So I was back for the summer I was back for like a week or so before I went off to training in Florida. So I was like, crap. And so I took him to Olive Garden. Our waitress had just taken our food, and it's like, Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. And they both look at each other and then look at me like, oh no, what happened? And so then I said, I think I'm going to go to the seminary. And they both started crying. And it was great because they were happy tears. They were very excited, it was not the reaction I was expecting. I was expecting confusion or like hesitancy, but instead they were just completely overjoyed. And my dad was the first one to get himself together. And he told me that he had always known since the day I was born that I would be a priest. I was like, what? And then I started like getting teary, and it's like, well, just shut up. And then my mom, she gets herself together and she goes, Logan, when I found out you were a boy, I consecrated you to Jesus to be his priest. I was just like, what the heck? But honestly, like super beautiful, like really, really beautiful graces, honestly, that really helped confirm that I was following God's will. And so I was also really thankful that they never told me that. That would have been so much pressure if they had been like, yeah, so Logan, consecrated you to Jesus, so you're going to have to be his priest. Sorry if you had other plans. It's like, no, she never told me. But yeah, just incredible support from them. Yeah, they were overjoyed. I'm sure it looked really confusing to everybody else in the restaurant. Like, yeah, I tell them something, they start crying, and then we're all laughing, and yeah, it was a good time. Good time in Olive Garden.
Wasn't really that you had so much to tell them, but they had stuff to tell you.
Yeah, seriously. I had no idea. I was not expecting that at all.
You're all very fortunate, because there's a lot of young men that I've spoken to that haven't been in that situation, where especially their dads have been very negative about them going into the seminary.
Yeah.
So you're very fortunate. Your families have all been very supportive.
Mm-hmm.
So with all the scandals that have gone on and all the bad things in the church, why would a young man go in the seminary today?
I think Bishop Robert Barron wrote a book, and I cannot remember the title right now off the top of my head, but he responds to essentially this question, not essentially, I guess, why a young man would want to be a priest, but why should Catholics stay with the church in the midst of this? And it's like, crisis is not the time to abandon the church. And so I think right now, one of the reasons that I think young men would and are drawn to the priesthood is because they recognize like a great need in the church for faithful leaders. And that, like, I mean, men always need something to fight for. And if that's not something
Absolutely.
to fight for, I don't really know what is. Like, we need faithful shepherds. We need men who can lead not just a whole community, but like specifically men. Like, we need really great shepherds. And I think that's incredibly attractive to young men who, most of the culture treats most men like idiots. Like, you look at Homer Simpson, it's like, that's what the world thinks of men, essentially. And it's like, that's not attractive to me. I don't want to be Homer Simpson. I want to be a saint. And I think that's what's attractive.
Awesome.
I think
the rest of you.
I think what resonates with men is that nothing, in a sense, it's, obviously there's this ugliness that's been revealed that's for some reason hasn't been taken care of for a reason. But it doesn't change the fact that it's the one true church. And if Christ calls us to be like him, that doesn't change the call. And
Yeah.
it's only a greater challenge for us. It's only this great, it's this great burden, but it's another thing that we can just unite to Christ. Like, because these men have, like, the priesthood for some reason is it's not this ugly thing. Yes, there is ugliness in it because of the actions of some very evil people, but it's still this beautiful example of love and generosity on the part of the man to give himself so completely to the church. And it's amazing. And it still draws men. And it just calls us to be better, holier, just amazing priests that can take this out of the mind of the people and try and be like, no, this is what truly a priest is called to do. And like, it's not a detriment. Like the celibacy is not a detriment. In fact, it's like this great, beautiful example of how we get to give ourselves to the church.
Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I think just to continue on their points, I think running away from your vocation and running away from the voice of Jesus is the reason why all of this stuff has been happening.
Yes, exactly.
Our own running away because we're afraid of this this trial only makes the problem worse. And so I think as an answer to that, and like they were saying, men are so attracted to suffering and to trial, and to answer that and to be who you are supposed to be, and to answer what you are supposed to answer is a step to the healing of the church, I think.
Absolutely. Mikey, you want to add on?
Oh man, I mean, there are so many good and beautiful things that are part of the priesthood that I just can't imagine throwing it out the window.
Yeah.
I mean, the priests are called to imitate Christ in a particular way. It's just such a beautiful calling that they're to be Christ in the world today, and in every age. And they're the ones who bring the faithful the sacraments, the things that we need to grow and thrive spiritually, the Eucharist, reconciliation, all of them. And without the priests, we can't have the sacraments. And they're just so essential to the Catholic faith, which is what we believe to be the fullness of truth and of life. There are just so many beautiful things with the priesthood. And I mean, there are broken priests, which is not good, and that's not the goal. There are also broken husbands and broken wives, broken religious. There are broken people. We're all broken people. And we live in
all original sin.
Yeah, we are all partaking in this sin, original sin. We live in a broken world, and I don't think that we should necessarily, I don't know, just use that as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so true.
Logan.
I think really like it boils down to, in some ways, like the priesthood is still attractive to young men because Jesus Christ himself is still attractive. Like he'll always be attractive. Like the way, the truth, and the life. Like we can't deny that our hearts are drawn to emulate him. And so when men start to actually like pursue Christ, they're going to hear that call and they're going to be attracted to whatever way of life he's calling them to. And if that's the priesthood, like no amount of scandal is going to keep like Jesus from fulfilling hearts.
It's not our plan, and yes, this is terrible, but like it only like Christ is all powerful, and if we let him do the healing, he's going to take care of it. And we just need to be perfect instruments and just say whatever you need done, Lord, like let me do it.
Mhm.
and he will.
Well, all the seminarians right now are the future of the church. It has a weight to carry with it, but also it's a huge opportunity
Mhm.
to actually change the church and make the church what she's supposed to be. Logan, you brought something up that really frustrates me a lot today, and that is just the total hit by the world on masculinity.
Mhm.
Okay, you mentioned Homer Simpson over here. You mentioned
Yeah.
Christ over here. Who do I want to be like? I sure don't want to be like a Homer Simpson, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to put that picture, that frame of reference there, if we compare those two, those are like polar opposites.
Mhm.
And most men that I know would much rather be like Christ than a Homer Simpson. And it's unfortunate today that the masculinity of men is being challenged, but it's also for an opportunity for us as men to live our lives as striving to be like Christ. And that will be the example for society that I believe that we need.
Yeah, truly. I think even atheists would rather be like Jesus Christ rather than Homer Simpson. Like, hey, it's kind of a no-brainer.
I've actually never watched a whole episode of that. I know who he is. I couldn't tell you who the other characters are in that particular show, but I've often wondered who would sit and watch a cartoon at night that's supposed to be like an adult show? I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's not my thing.
Yeah. I just.
It is interesting that you bring up like Homer Simpson though, because so many portrayals of masculinity are wrong, but also like the ones that are so attractive, like are Christ-like figures in movies. Like
Mhm.
there's the reason I can't remember the priest that said it, but that's the reason like movies with Christ figures are so popular. It's because he's still attractive in the world, even if we don't realize it.
Yeah.
Well, even in the adventure movies, you know, they aren't wimps, right?
Mhm.
That's one of the reasons that I think adventure movies are so popular is because they're not wimps. But
Mhm.
if you go back in some of the movies that I really like, you know, you got Gladiator, and then, you know, you have Mel Gibson and
Yeah.
those, you know, the movie he was in, and, you know, they're heroes and they're people that, you know, they aren't wimpy guys.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
society really wants us to go down that path, but we need real men that are priests too.
Yeah.
They set great examples. I know when my kids were young, my boys, and they get around a really masculine priest, they'd be like, wow, that was awesome. I really like him.
Mhm.
So we need those priests that actually go out and they'll play. You know, I know several of you have been in the camps. And when you go to camp, the priests actually go out there and they play with the sports with you, right?
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
it's good for them to see that type of example when you go out there.
Mhm.
I have a question too. What are the seminaries like today? Because there's a lot of stories from the old seminaries of just things that were not good that were going on. What's it like today?
So at Kendrick Glennon Seminary, I can only speak for Kendrick Glennon, but it's a super healthy community of men. Yeah, it's been an incredible place to grow as a man because we're encouraged to like to be ourselves, not to hide, so that we can just slip through and get ordained. It's like I will experience like fullness of life, like happiness and joy, only when I am truly being myself. And that, in that freedom of knowing who I am in the Father's eyes, that's where I can receive a vocation. And so Kendrick Glennon Seminary has been all about like becoming healthy human beings. And then the next step is, where's Christ calling me? Like obviously, like the guys have already like in some way received some sort of calling that led them to enter the seminary, but like we really need to make sure we're healthy. And so Kendrick Glennon Seminary has been doing an incredible job of focusing on what we call the human side of formation, like developing just like basic habits. Like, do you make your bed? Will you shower on a regular basis? Like, can you do these simple things? Can you get to bed on time so that you can wake up for an early morning prayer with the rest of the community? Like simple things like that. And it's like, it's amazing to see what happens when you actually start to be human, when you actually care about being an excellent person. Like then holiness just begins to happen. Like, so in my, I've been at Kendrick Glennon Seminary for 4 years. And in those years, like every single year, like as a community, we're all getting closer to Christ. And it's just incredible to see. And it's like, holy cow, like I love being at the seminary because I'm surrounded by 130 other guys who are just chasing after God. Like they just want to give their entire life to God the same way I do. And we're all willing to help each other in any way. It's an incredible community. And there's very few places like it, except for other seminaries around the country, hopefully.
Are you seeing that the teachings are true to the church?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yes. So Archbishop Carlson, he's the bishop in St. Louis, and he talked about how like when you're trying to restructure a seminary to make it healthy again, you got to start with like, are we teaching the right things? Is orthodoxy being taught? And once that's the case, then what's happening at Kendrick Glennon can start to happen. And so, yeah, Kendrick Glennon has done a phenomenal job of making sure everything is orthodox and yes, very in line with the church's teachings, thank God.
It didn't always used to be that way.
No, unfortunately, it did not.
How about the three of you?
Yeah, I think Logan said it really, really well. Yeah, it's just that we at St. John Vianney Seminary really focus on brotherhood and fraternity and how that will build you up as your own individual. And especially since we're minor seminarians, so we usually when men come into the seminary, to our seminary, they're younger. And so usually there needs to be like a foundation that's really built. And so our seminary, I think, does a really good job at building that foundation so that when they go to major seminary, they are well on their way to really diving into listening to Jesus's call.
I mean, I think our rector has said it numerous times that his primary job is to make good, holy Catholic men, priest or not. Like the men that come out of SJV, he wants to be he wants them to know Christ and to like have the tools to just be a good, healthy man first. Because like Logan said, there's several pillars of formation, and if you don't take care of the human, right, like the spiritual builds on like your physical. Like if you're not taking care of your physical person, if you're not exercising, eating right, sleeping right, your holy hour, your prayer is gonna suffer. And so to just like build up that humanity is like the baseline that I think all seminarians have to start with. And that's what they do. They really make sure you're committed to being a good like man first.
And that's what all men should really strive for. It should be no different. That human formation should be the same.
Yeah, I truly wish like all guys could go to seminary.
I know, right?
For just like 2 years, just go.
I think there's a lot of Catholic women that would like to see all guys go to seminary for a little bit.
Seriously.
Just a little bit of formation in them and grow up a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of challenges out there. Like you guys are aware, I've been told by some of my resources that I've had on the show that one of the two of the biggest things, impediments of getting into seminary are number one, pornography, and number two would be just addicted to video games, which actually leads to other types of addictions. But those are two of the things that are the biggest impediments right now. And it's a huge challenge because I can pick up my phone and within maybe 1 or 2 clicks, I could be on a site that would be very bad for me to be on as a married man.
Yeah.
And as a young man, it's just a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the pornography industry is just horrifying. the amount, oh gosh. Yes. Senator Ben Sass here in Nebraska, he actually is like pushing to have a major porn site like punished by the federal government, which I think is awesome. But like the Omaha World Herald ran an article about it, and the numbers are just absolutely unreal. How much is consumed and how much is produced and uploaded every day. It's just, it's horrifying. And so it's like, we talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, and that's a real terrible situation. But like pornography is spiritually the pandemic that like we're facing right now, that is just destroying lives. It's just wrecking men and women. Like every single year, more and more women are coming under the influence of pornography and developing addictions. And yeah, I saw it a lot as a focused missionary. Like so many times when I would talk to students and they would open up, they would finally like talk about how they feel like the biggest thing keeping them away from Jesus is their addiction to pornography or their struggles with masturbation. And so it's like praying with them through that and like walking them through like trying to heal. That was a huge part of what I did as a focused missionary with guys.
And not just a spiritual harm, like it affects your physical as well.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
It actually has an impact on your brain.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it, I would say it makes it, if you're like actively addicted to pornography, it makes it almost impossible to like almost to engage in healthy like opposite sex relationships. So like it's just brutal, and it really hurts.
The problem is it objectifies women, and it's a problem in society in general, just even the way we do commercials, advertisements, those type of things. But pornography totally objectifies the woman. It actually takes the dignity and the beauty of that woman away. What I always tell guys is, gosh, think if that was your sister up there doing those things. Would you want to have any people looking at your sister? I haven't met anybody yet that says, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." They're horrified.
Yeah,
it takes the personhood right out.
It takes the personhood right out. You're right, Devin. And it's a huge challenge with young men. One of the things I had James Baxter on the show, and he talked about Exodus 90. He's the co-founder of Exodus 90. And that is one thing with young men that they have found, that if they're not super addicted, that Exodus 90 can get them out of that circle of that pornography. There are times it just takes professional help. So, and it is a huge challenge. I know that for young men today. What are some of the other challenges that you guys see amongst young men today?
I would say just like honestly, it's just a giant misunderstanding in my mind of what really keeps men, and the fact that they think, and a lot of men and a lot of what they're told is like take for what is yours, right? Like try and fill yourself up as much as you can. And I mean, if you look back at any historical text and like all the way back to the Greeks, you see that this has been a problem forever, that people are trying to be like, I just need to fill up my whatever I want and then I'll be happy. The problem is that they find out that doesn't work. And so when a man is like, I won't be happy if I like give up my life in their idea, then that's a huge obstacle. And until they realize that, like, by giving up their lives, it's really fulfilling. Like, there's a huge fulfillment in that because we're made to sacrifice as men.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can be a big obstacle.
I think another obstacle that I know, at least personally, is at least in the culture around like where I went to high school and kind of my life has been, we young people are always searching for permission to do something. And we're kind of like helicoptered, and we always need to be comfortable. And so I know, like, growing up in like middle school, like I really like I just wanted to be great, but I didn't have that permission to be great. Like, no one told me, like, this is what you're made for. And so yeah, that's been a big grace coming to seminary. Just like, you have permission to be a saint. Like, and this is how you do it. It's not just some abstract thing. So yeah, we need to give men permission.
Awesome. I like that, Josh. And if you ask men if do you want to be a saint? Oh no, I don't want to be holy. I don't want to be, that just, I'll tell you what, everybody that goes to heaven is a saint. Okay. They may not be a saint made in the church, but everybody that goes to heaven is a saint. So it's something that we all are striving for. Just a lot of us don't really know that that's really what we should be given the freedom to strive for.
Or that it's achievable.
Right. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's not impossible.
So you guys are all not at your seminaries right now. They sent you all home. And you're just like all the other college students doing your studies from home. What's that like?
It's interesting. It definitely feels strange. There's lots of parts that are missing. A big part is community. That's just sort of absent from our day-to-day lives at times. Because at the seminary, you kind of do everything in community. You pray in the morning as a community. You eat meals together in community with other seminarians, other guys. You go to classes as a community. You hang out, recreation, work out, like everything you do with other guys, and grow with them. So being back home, it's definitely very different when those interactions with your brother seminarians are so limited to phone calls, text messages, Zoom classes. So it's definitely a bit different with that being the way that things are right now.
Mm-hmm. Does it put you behind it all?
It shouldn't, not like academically or
spiritually. Like I think we have access to a lot of the same resources, but I don't think it puts us behind, but it definitely like makes it a lot more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one of the reasons I think we hang out a lot. Like, as us four, I know we spend a lot of time together because we need that community. We need that brotherhood to keep us going.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So how has the coronavirus impacted you?
I think it's been really awesome to just kind of, honestly, like, obviously the coronavirus is not awesome. There's
right.
But the Lord has blessed me a lot in this, I think, and I know, and just being at the parish, being at St. Stephen the Martyr, and seeing the priest's life day to day is really, really beautiful, and something I've been praying about, and then the Lord delivers. So yeah, in that sense, it's been very good.
How about you, Logan?
So I'm in a bit of a different situation than these guys. I've been back in Omaha for the last 6 months, recuperating from a a head injury. And so it kind of sounds bad, but like the pandemic hasn't really changed my life at all, because I was already essentially stuck at home. I
So
just
you were
started driving
quarantined?
again. Yeah, I was basically quarantined already, just because I just started driving again a couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago, something like that. So it's like I've been at home, and so I really do. I feel like I understand what all my brother seminarians are going through right now, like the transition from like community life and community prayer and studies to having very little of that. It's a difficult transition, but one thing we have to remember, and I think that the seminaries are doing a good job with, is that all of this is part of our formation. Like, just because we left the seminary building doesn't mean that we're no longer seminarians being formed and conformed to Jesus Christ. Like we're still doing that. Like in this departure that all of us, this exodus that we've all had, really is that's part of it, because we have to detach ourselves from so much right now. Just like everyone else, like so many people, like entertainment's gone, sports are gone. Like, what is the world going to do? It's like so much detachment right now. And ironically, in a time when the church traditionally practices detachment during Lent. So yeah, it's hasn't done a lot for me, except make me able to relate to to my brothers a little better, because they now, yeah, they're in a tough situation, because I'm not in classes, so I feel bad, like I'm quarantined, but I don't have any. My only responsibilities are to get better, which there's only so much I can do, because it's my brain. You can't flex your brain and make it better, I guess. I'm not sure, but so like I have a lot of respect for the way that like, I don't know, these three guys and the other guys that I talk to, like the way they're handling this situation has just been incredible. Like, there could be so much bitterness, like, to be dragged away from a community, but instead to be able to just like stand up and say, you know what, this is the situation we have. The Lord's still the Lord, and he still has something here for me in this time. And that's really, yeah, that's beautiful. And that's really inspiring to me. And it helps me like reframe my own, I don't know, views of my situation.
I think it's been a big blessing to see how people are reacting, because we distributed palms on Palm Sunday at our parish, and people are starving for Christ. Like they're
especially the Eucharist.
They are they're so hungry, and I've loved to see it. Like, it really purifies that desire through like that like trying time. You're like, what am I missing that is hurting me? And it's Jesus. Like, the ability for people to recognize that they're missing him is beautiful. And I've experienced graces from just being able to like, no, you're right. Like, I need him a lot.
So Logan did have an injury while he was at seminary. He was playing soccer. Who says you can't get hurt playing soccer? So I have a question here, and it's the last question I'm going to have for you guys. What would you tell a young man that feels he might have a call to the priesthood? Michael, you haven't said anything for a little while. Let's start with you.
Yeah. I would tell this young man that he has nothing to be afraid of at all. No matter what fears might surface in his heart, none of them are real. No matter how real they may seem at the time, they're fake. And that the Lord, whether or not he's called to the priesthood, to be ordained a priest, the Lord is going to do so many wonderful and beautiful things with him if he's like willing to explore that. And if he's called to the seminary, so much fruit is going to come out of his experience there. And he's going to grow in so many ways that really he has nothing to fear. Only good things that's all that the Lord has in store for him. So I would encourage him.
You, Josh?
I would say, yeah, I was just going to say, don't freak out. Like, everything is going to be okay. But you can freak out if you're not praying, though. That's the first step. You got to pray. If you're not doing it now, make Jesus the center of your life, or don't make him the center of your life. Let him make himself the center of your life. And what does that mean right now in this time of quarantine? Well, I don't know. Make a little corner in your house and just spend 15, 30 minutes a day, just maybe opening up the scripture, listening, because scripture is not just a bunch of words. It's Jesus's words to you right now. And so, take up scripture, take up prayer, adoration, when that comes available. And don't freak out. The Lord has a plan.
Devin?
Yeah. Honestly, do not be afraid. Don't freak out. Like, those are great, but actually not, but like, they're just amazing. But it's so beautiful to start to just realize that the Lord has that plan for you. And to realize that if there's something you're scared about in that moment, I mean, it's a fake fear, only in the sense that the Lord will do whatever he needs to get that out of your way. Like, that fear will continue to affect you if you don't let him take over. Just at that point, I think that's been a huge grace for me in the seminary is if there's something that's struggling me, just be honest with the Lord. Mm-hmm. If I bring something to him honestly and I say, Lord, it is just so tough to get up early in the morning and pray. Like, it's very tough for me right now. Lord, I need some strength to help me out. He's going to respond. And he's going to respond with whatever you need because he knows you better than anyone. So let him let yourself get to know him so that you can begin to trust in him because he has the plan. He has all the tools. You just need to ask.
Logan, what do you have to add?
Just a few things, I guess, from my experiences of discernment and what others have told me. One of them is the devil isn't the one who can inspire those kinds of thoughts, such as, I might want to be a priest, or I think I might be called to the seminary. Like, those don't come from the evil one. And so, that's something to take a lot of comfort in, that the Lord is speaking to your heart. If you as a man are hearing some sort of desire or experiencing some sort of desire to give your life as a priest, that's coming from the Lord. That needs to be discerned, obviously, because is it really directed towards the priesthood? I don't know, but that's from the Lord. That desire to give yourself so totally into God's hands, that can't come from anywhere but the Holy Spirit. And so I've taken a lot of comfort in that during my journey. And another thing that I've really focused on since I was a focused missionary, ironically, is love. I think guys can struggle at times with the concept or the idea of falling in love with God because of our hypersexualized culture. But love is to know and be known, to give oneself and to receive the other. That's love. And when I started to truly love God and to seek to love him more and to receive his love, that's when I really knew that I was being called to enter the seminary. And that's what's carried me through this time. Like sometimes I can like give some reasons why I might want to be a priest. Like, oh, it'd be great to serve people in this way, or like the spiritual fatherhood is really fulfilling. Like I can give reasons like that. And those are legitimate reasons. I don't want to downplay that. But for me right now, like I'm in the seminary because God has loved me there. Like he loved me into seminary. And so like for any man who's thinking like perhaps I'm called to be a priest, like maybe I should go to seminary, it's like God's love is going to draw you where you need to go. And so like again, like Josh said, like prayer is where you're going to experience that love and to be led by it into that fullness that Christ wants to give all of us. So yeah, I think those are a couple things that have like really been helpful for me. And again, I want to second everything these guys said, because the process of discernment is incredibly individual, and there are going to be some key graces that are going to lead a man where he needs to go, and especially the priesthood. Like there's going to be some pretty profound graces that'll lead a man there. You don't just kind of stumble into ordination. Those days are done. There's no more of that crap.
No, you don't. And not everybody that goes to the seminary through their discernment process, sometimes they discern out and decide that, that's truly not what God is calling them to do at this point in time. Yeah. So just because you go into the seminary doesn't mean like you're going to have to, as you said, Logan, you're going to stumble your way to ordination. Yeah. They're going to force you into ordination. Christ is going to lead you. And as you said, God's going to love you all the way to your ordination and through your ordination. And on top of that, you have somebody that is on your right-hand shoulder. And those that aren't watching this, he has a picture of the Blessed Mother. Our Lady of Guadalupe is actually the photo that he has behind him. So that mother too will help you in your discernment process as well. She can do amazing things.
Yes, she can.
And she's led a lot of men into the priesthood.
Amen.
So guys, thank you very much. It was awesome hanging out with you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
I'm sure that there's a lot of young men and fathers, dads that are going to really enjoy this show. So thank you. God bless.
No problem. God bless you, Jeff.
God bless.